I take my right leg up first, and then I release the left leg down. And there's many ways to do this pose, but this practice is particularly for hypertonic pelvic floor. So a lot of you have probably done this pose, and so I want to show a few little nuanced things. So a lot of people, when they get into this pose, they over-pull the leg, which gets my hamstring stretching, but it's not really doing much for my pelvic floor. So what I'm going to say is, depending on your mobility, I want you to keep the leg straight, but keep the leg right over the hip socket. And what that does, I want you to see again, if I pull, this pushes my lumbar spine into the floor. Okay, there's nothing wrong with this pose, but again, we're here to stretch the pelvic floor. So I want the leg more perpendicular to the hip, and that brings the weight on the back body to the sacrum. And then that's when I can have a very different experience in the pelvic floor. So here, I'm on my lumbar, here, I'm on my sacrum, and then what I want to think about is bringing my sitting bone. So remember, the pelvic floor, part of the pelvic floor attaches to the sitting bones. I want to lengthen my sitting bone away from my head, and I'm thinking about my tailbone releasing towards the ground. So the pelvic floor attaches to the sitting bones, the tailbone, the pubic bone. And so as you're here, you're imagining that you're unfurling your tail and that your sitting bone can actually move towards the floor. So in my imagination, I'm thinking, okay, hamstring, go this way rather than this way. Okay, now if the hamstring is a little bit on the tighter side, then I would prefer the leg be slightly bent, but the femur bone over the hip socket rather than having the leg out here. And now the inner thigh muscles connect right into the same place where the second layer of the pelvic floor connects. So often, if your pelvic floor is tight, particularly on the second layer of a pelvic floor, remember that runs sitting bone to sitting bone, often I find that the students' adductors are really tight. So we're taking a couple moments here to stretch out the adductors, which will actually bring more blood flow into the second layer of the pelvic floor.